Good afternoon, and welcome to Gator Games and Books, Gator's Garage, the home of all things historical gaming in and around the great city of Savannah, Georgia. We have with us this afternoon the incomparable Kalissa Skibiki. She was the tournament organizer for the recent bolt action tournament at Siege of Augusta. I did a bit of a recap on that earlier this week when I recapped the convention, and we thought we would circle back and talk about the good, the bad, and the better on the tournament and how that went. So before we get too deep in, of course, you all know to do the YouTube things: like, subscribe, share, make comments, keep them family friendly if you would, please. And if there's other things you'd like to see us cover, give us a shout. If you got questions for me or Kalissa, you can drop them in the notes below, or you can send an email to the address that you'll see in the comment section. Kalissa, how was the tournament?
So the tournament was actually, I would say, success overall. We had 12 players, which is how many who signed up, and everybody showed up. We actually had one who was hoping to get in and play. So there was a 13th potential player, but we were full. Everyone showed up. So he unfortunately wasn't able to get in. But he was able to play a game the night before. So it was just one of those last minute, I'm here at the convention. If I can get in, great. If not, it's okay type of players.
I noticed too, and I appreciate that you guys leave your tables up so that not only do you set them up early to give everybody the wow factor, and oh my gosh, so many comments about how awesome y'all's tables looked, but you also make them available for people to use for, I guess, bolt action, or I guess anything else, as long as the tables are not bothered for the tournament.
Correct. We do leave our tables up for open gaming, both before the tournament. In this case, because I didn't run a Friday event, they were available all day Friday. Usually they're available after the Friday event. They're available on Saturdays after the event. And then we do start cleaning up Sunday. Although sometimes we have had people use one of them on Sunday mornings as we're cleaning up everything else. We do leave them open for bolt action. We've played What a Tanker on them before. Just like a quick, like, hey, let's jump out, get a game in real quick, or a quick Normandy firefight thing. Just little things like that to let people use them.
Yeah, that might be looking forward to. If you're going to preset your tables, we might even promote that as available, like on a Friday night. Yeah, I know it can vary from year to year, but if you're going to be preset, that might be something that me or even you could say, hey, the tables are up if you want to give it a test drive, if you want to play something on there. So well, people will see this video and I'll have it to kind of review for next year. But again, it's one more of those unique things that we do at Siege. And and I got to tell you, I don't know that I've ever, it's been a while, if ever, that I've seen Siege as busy as it was Friday afternoon. Could you believe that?
It was very busy. I was actually really pleased with how full the main room was both days, Friday and Saturday. But Friday did have a really, really nice turnout.
Yeah, I was like, wow, just amazing. Of course, now did you get any gaming in Friday, or did you spend all your time getting caught up with folk?
So ironically, I actually spent my whole time getting caught up with people. So I had taken the day off so that I could actually try to get some gaming in, which is why I chose not to run a Friday event, because usually I'm so busy running the events, or even in addition to having tables open for open gaming at times, sometimes I set up more tables than I actually need during the tournament, because either I have extra table space or players don't show because life happens, those type of things. So sometimes I end up running demos while running the tournament. But so usually I'm so busy with that, I don't get gaming in. So I purposely left Friday to get gaming in. But there were just so many people that I hadn't seen either since last year at Siege or just in a couple of months. And I actually spent most of the day just talking and catching up with people, that I didn't actually get any gaming in. And then if I wasn't talking, catching up with people, Phil from Sherwood War Games, his other half wasn't able to travel with him this time. So I actually ended up helping him out and working vendor booths too.
Yeah, I know about that. I was solo myself, so I had Dave and Brian on the other end, kind of keeping an eye on things for me. So it's one of the cool things about the community is whatever you're doing, people are there to help, and that's awesome. And I know, hey, Sherwood had quite an advantage. He had not only his knowledge base, but yours to draw on too. So that's really cool. And I'll tell you, the sometimes Sherwood and I draw off each other when it comes to business, but there seemed to be plenty to go around. I got to tell you, the vendor setup this time was probably one of the best I've seen. Brandon made a conscious effort, I think, to limit the amount of vendors, and I think overall it made the hall look better. It gave players more room, and then also gave the vendors that were there more of an opportunity to show their stuff. People weren't necessarily as rushed. Oh, I got to get through all these. I don't know how many we had last year, but we were probably 2/3 of that this year. So that's really good. And again, not just the bolt action community, but the game community in general is just so helpful to one another. I know I was able to take breaks because people covered me. So that's good that you could take care of Phil. He was like, "Yeah, I'm flying solo this week," so didn't have his Tina there to keep him straight. So that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
I did some
So
stints at the registration desk on Friday too.
do what?
I did some
You
stints at
took,
the registration desk on Friday too for the convention.
oh, I'm sure Carolyn appreciated that. So yeah, people, it's kind of funny. Sometimes folks will be like, "Why should I go to a convention?" Well, one, it's where the wider community is. I try and tell people this. Matter of fact, with Skirmish coming up, I'll probably be dropping a larger article to try and get people from Savannah to go to Jack's, which is about an hour and a half away. To say, look, it's a you get to see more in different games. I mean, you didn't get to play, but the opportunity was there for all kinds of different stuff. But the other thing is, you begin to develop relationships with people outside your small circle that you normally game with. For me, I was in Augusta, shoot, for 20 years. So I've got like 20 years of friends that I've got in that con that I get to see. And then what the cool thing for me is now I've got people from Augusta, Jacksonville, and Savannah that all come together at Siege. And for me, that's like, wow. So I hear you on that. And I see a lot of people that it seems like I tend to more see them visiting than I see playing games. But whatever you choose to do, Siege is a good place to do it. So registration went smooth for the con. Now I understand you had how many new players did you have on your tournament?
So I had one that I know for sure. These were his first 3 games. The tournament
That's
was the first games
awesome.
he ever played. So,
Wow. Okay.
and then I had 2 players who they've played before, but they haven't played frequently. And
Okay.
so they are returning players from last year's event. In fact, when they reached out for information about this year's Siege, they had said that the event last year was one of their best days of gaming that they had had.
Awesome.
So they
Awesome.
were looking forward to coming back this year. I know our new player who had joined us had reached out to me a little unsure about playing because he's like, "Are you sure it's going to be beginner friendly?" And by the end of the day, he had talked about how he had learned a lot, had had some great games, and he had gone from just thinking, "Oh, well, maybe I'll get my wife and kids into playing this and I'll just play with the family," to, "I loved it. I can't wait for the next event. And I can't wait to play with
That's
more people."
fantastic.
And he actually connected with some players in the tournament who live relatively close to him that he
Isn't
can
that
then
funny?
connect with and play more regularly with and build that community with. And then I had a couple of other players who have been playing bolt action through multiple of the versions. And they just haven't had much experience with version 3 yet because it's still so relatively new. So this event was their first foray into 3rd edition.
Wow. Okay. Now, did you know about the new folks? Do you like query people about their experience level when you're putting your tournament list together, or do you just kind of know who your players are?
So I don't actually ask people. I don't usually say to them like, "Hey, how long have you been playing?" Any of those type of things. They actually usually volunteer it to me. They usually
Yeah.
reach out to me. So I actually have a following, I guess you could call it. a following of players who, like, these are my core players. These are my core ones who show up at every event. Like, I know these are going to be my consistent ones. So actually at the event this weekend, there were only 3 faces that I didn't actually really know out of the 12 players. And I had a few others reach out to me and be like, hey, they don't usually, like, they usually come, but they couldn't make it this year because of different events.
Sure.
So I usually have a general idea as to the experience of my players. So then I'm able to do such certain things, such as I know that I had that really new player. And first round, I purposely put him with a experienced player who I knew would also give him a good game.
Yep. I think I know who that is. Yep.
I set my tournaments up to be beginner friendly. That is the whole purpose of my tournaments. They're labeled as tournaments, but I don't know if you could necessarily really call them a tournament per se, because they don't bring out maybe the super competitive side of people. I mean, people do get competitive, but they don't try to be like that ultra spam competitive power players that you might experience from other tournament settings. It usually tends to be more laid back, more relaxed. Hey, we're just here to have some friendly games.
Yeah. And I think especially this year with version 3 coming out, there's still a lot of people that are really new. I think I ran a tournament in October, and it was like the first version 3 tournament. Approached it the same way, casual, low points. So that's, I think, the other thing is everybody still is on a learning curve. I've also seen that it's a function of the bolt action community that while we can be very competitive, especially if you've got 2 competitive players, I mean, there is no quarter. But if you know you got a new player, folks are just very considerate, and I really, and I'm like you. I've run a few, and I know I've got one coming up in March, and there are 2 or 3 players, veterans, that I know if I got a new player. And I'm like you. I've told people who said, "Well, I've never played, or I've played once." Come on, you're going to play 3 more times, and you'll have fun. And like you say, people usually find they have fun. And like you, I know the last event we ran at a live church, we had, I think, 8 or 12. And so it may have been 12, may have been 16. It was big. Couldn't believe it. I was like, "Holy Hannah!" And it was that first version 3 tournament. And the other thing we do when we have these events is we also make sure we let people know it's open gaming. And I was really fortunate that I actually had an extra guy who came just to play and teach just regular bolt action. And so both times you had somebody demoing bolt action. I think last year you had Patrick actually running demos of maybe version 3 because it was due to come out. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting my comms mixed up. But that's really awesome, Kalissa. If I wasn't so far down the road, I'd probably be running demos. Do what?
Patrick was just playing last year.
Yeah.
Patrick just comes up and plays in the tournaments. If there's demos happening during my tournaments at Siege, either I'm running it or my husband David will jump in and run them if he's not running as an alternate in the tournament.
Fantastic. That's very good. Yeah, and that's really now for my demos. I ran Black Powder on Friday night, and then I ran this Coors War on Saturday and Sunday, just because those were different. Now, when I go to Skirmish Con, I'm running a bolt action demo on Sunday morning because there's not going to be any tournament there. So it's going to be Blood and Crowns, and then this Coors War, and then bolt action. So again, I love that we're getting the word out. I'm seeing it grow. I'm seeing people are starting to look at this new starter kit too. I've sold a couple of those. They like it. They like that it's fairly evenly balanced. My favorite though is still the Gentleman's War, and that's what I'm going to show it at Skirmish. It's just so balanced, so fantastic. Did you by chance publish a list anywhere of who the winners were?
I did not publish a list. I did not publish a list. I have not had a chance to sit down with coming back from the convention and then jumping right back into work, and then us being out with this weather. And work. I have not
Okay.
gotten to that yet, but I will be posting an after action report that will then have the winners and all of that on it. Actually, our winners for the tournament were actually our husband and wife team actually took first and second place that were playing in the tournament. So
I saw that. That was so awesome. And I guess they must play a lot.
they do. I think if I'm remembering correctly, they only started playing about 2 years ago.
That's a lot.
And
That's
then
plenty. Yeah.
yeah, they started playing about 2 years ago. They've Monica's played in a couple of my tournaments now. Joey's talked her into playing into several different tournaments, actually. Pulled her into it. But Joey took first place with his U.S. Marines. And then Monica came in second with her Japanese. It had to come down to tiebreaker points. And Joey actually had her by 1 point.
Oh, that's so cool. Did they have to play each other as well in the final round?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay. That would have been hilarious. Wow, that's pretty cool though. Yeah. I like to say I saw that and I'm like, it's one of those things that we're starting to see more in the hobby is we're starting to see more ladies come into the hobby and we're starting to see more wives get involved. And I just think that's all to the good. The more folks we can get in, the more the more women understand that this is not just a men's hobby, that it's a hobby for everybody. I just think the better it is, and I love that. That's fantastic. Let's see. That's I guess that's the biggest. So you got in there, got good. I know you had good support from me and from Warlord and from the tournament, the convention folks. Um, if you had to make one improvement, what would that be?
Um, So I've been reflecting on this a little bit because it was my first version 3 tournament that I've run. And so I was trying to adjust. And it's actually ironic that you're asking this question because actually before the tournament, I have to pull some information together for 2 other tournament organizers who have actually asked me to kind of gather lists that have been submitted to me, let them know what scenarios I ran so that they can kind of tweak their tournament packs and those type of things. I think one of the things that I might need to play around with, and I don't know if I'm going to do it yet. I might wait until after the tournament that I run in May at Richmond Open at Meadow Event Park to see how that one goes. Is I might have to play around with the point limit and the time limits.
Okay, what did you run into?
Because so I ran this at 1250 for points. And
Which is
each
pretty
round
much
was
standard.
Right. And each round was 2.5 hours, which is what I usually run everything at. I usually give them about 15, maybe 20 minutes because I'm a little flexible on the time. I'm not one of those hard, like, it's 2.5 hours, your time's up, type of hard limits with things. So because ultimately we're there to play a game and have fun. So I give them about 15, 20 minutes after I announce missions and pairings and tables to go, hey, here's my list. This is the scenario. This is a terrain. Let's talk about all of that because I don't like that to cut into their 2.5 hours of playing time.
Hey, that makes sense. So on the front end, you're kind of waiting to start the clock until you can kind of see that everybody's kind of settled and ready to play.
Right.
Cool.
And then when we hit that 2.5 hours, I kind of go and I kind of see like, okay, well, where are you at in the turn? And they're like, well, we have like 2 order dice left. Okay, go ahead and do those 2 order dice. Or they're like, we have 5 order dice. Do the 5 order dice. It's not like it's gonna take you half an hour to do 5 order dice, where it's gonna be, that big of a deal with things. If they're like, we just started a turn and we have 20 order dice, well, no, you're done, type of thing.
Right.
Or they're like, we have 1 critical thing that could make or break this game right now. And I'm like, all right, I'll give you 5 minutes because you got 1 critical thing, you got 5 more minutes. And depending on how the dice roll in those 5 minutes, that determines that critical piece that you need to fight out those 2 critical units or something.
Sure.
Just because I want them to have that. And usually after each round anyway, we're going into a break or we're going into lunch. So the times are built for some of it. But I've noticed that I don't know if it's just because everybody's still kind of new with version 3, which I'm sure that has to do a lot with it. They were taking a little bit longer to get through the turns.
Okay.
And I wouldn't actually say it had anything to do with the list per se, because most of the lists that got turned in, because I don't limit platoons, I don't limit how many they bring for platoon, I don't limit order dice, any of that type of stuff. Most lists were sitting around 16 to 18 order dice. The highest list had 24, and that was a Russian list. He had a lot of the dog mines. So he had a lot of the dog mines. So he had a lot of like smaller units. He actually came in third with that list. But so the most that I know happened, as far as like dice being paired up, was in round 2. The Russian player with the 24 dice list faced our Italian player who had a good number. So they had like 40 dice in a bag. So I know that does take, but I've had that before with version 2 and they still managed to get through a good number of turns. It just seemed like it was taking them a little bit longer and that they weren't getting into turns 4 and 5 as much as it has been in my past tournaments. Like it was really struggling for them to get through 3 turns. So I might play around with point limits. There's a tournament coming up at Williamsburg Muster that usually I run, but due to work schedules for both myself and my husband this year, we can't make it this year. So one of our players has stepped up and is running it. He's running it at 1,000 points. So I'm curious to see how that goes, if that makes it a little bit quicker. I'm curious to see how it goes when Patrick runs it at Recon and what he's looking at putting into place. And I'll see how it goes at Richmond Open too, before I make any like changes per se.
Yeah, I know we had a couple guys running a practice game at our last club meeting, and they had 40 dice between them. And our club meetings run about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours long. I think they got maybe a little late start, but I don't think they were able to finish. And that's been an ongoing discussion among TOs and even the community. Do you limit the dice? Do you limit the equipment? Where's the balance? And I don't know that anybody's found it yet. When I did limit both dice and points when I ran my version 3. I got a little grumbling about it, but I wanted to make sure that we could get through in a reasonably quick amount of time. So yeah, that's I guess all we're gonna have to do as TOs is kick the tires on that. The consensus from the community seems to be, I've not seen anybody grouse too much about points, but they definitely don't like dice limits. They feel that really limits them. So, but again, as TOs, we want to be able to get good resolution. So did everybody get to finish their round, or did you find a lot of people they were only getting to like maybe turn 4, turn 5?
So most of them were getting to like turn 5, mainly a few to turn 4, mainly to turn 5. But I mean, that's about how it was with version 2, though, too, when I ran tournaments. So I'm not really that concerned about it per se. Nobody actually really said that they couldn't finish anything, though, either. So, and I actually did, first round, I actually did have somebody who finished 30 minutes early. They finished and they were done. And there was still 30 minutes in the round. So,
sounds like somebody got tabled.
Kind of. The only complaint that was kind of heard from me as far as like, it's a little slow going, was for our jungle table, but I already knew that was coming. Even when we set up the table, I knew I was going to hear that complaint that they're going to be like, it's slow going, moving our inventory through the table for the terrain. But I expected that because of how we set the table up and with the terrain. Because it was a little heavier, but it was designed to be like a jungle. So of course it was going to be that table. We already knew it was going to be the most hated table, and it lived up to its name. So, most hated table.
Most hated table.
but they still enjoyed themselves and they still all had a good game, everybody who played on that table. So
Excellent. Yeah. Very cool.
I'm just
Hey,
gonna play around and see how it goes.
absolutely. Yeah, I think even in the case of a jungle table, if you wanted to speed it up, you might throw some footpaths or something in there that folks could take through,
There
or
were.
have a slow playing table. There you go.
There were
So you
roads.
had a
You just
jungle
didn't want to
table?
go on them.
Yeah. So you had a jungle table. I think I saw a snow table and a desert table.
Yes.
And then what else did you have?
So there was a snow, a jungle, a desert table, a snow-ish table. So it wasn't straight snow, but it was a table where like it had scatterings of snow, dusting of snow, I guess you could say.
Slush.
Sure, slush. Let's see. We had and I'd say just 2 countryside tables.
Right.
They had some buildings on them. One might be more of like a Sicilian countryside based on where the buildings were from.
Saw that. Yeah.
But they just had some like hedgerows, some just regular hedgerow. So just your hedgerow countryside. So maybe like a French countryside.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a pretty standard mix. Excellent. Very good. If you could change out any table, what would you change out?
So we actually left a container of buildings behind at our house that we meant to bring with us. So we would have had a city table instead.
Okay. Okay.
But we would have had a city table. What else have we done before? We have like 70 different mats that we can put out.
Wow.
And because everything can change out that goes on top of them, there's like unlimited type of tables that we can make almost in a way. So it's really hard to figure like what we could have brought that we didn't bring, or to think of it.
Wow.
We could have done a much more Sicilian type setting than what we did do. One that would be like more of a straight Sicily setting.
Yes.
Lots
of rocks, lots of masonry buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, we could have done one of those. We could have done a straight city. We could have done more hedges. We could have done more forest type. Lots of different options that we could have done.
Excellent. Yeah.
Lots of different countryside versions.
Yeah. Yeah. That is probably one of the coolest things about miniature wargaming, and wargaming World War II. People don't often think of all the varied terrain and places where battles were fought. And you literally have from North Africa to Northern Russia to the Pacific to just all kinds of options when it comes to putting your tables together. And that's pretty exciting. So that's cool. All right. I just thought I'd ask about that. Again, you guys are well known and well respected. You know, generally, if I see you running a tournament, I make sure I do my part to promote it and tell people you want to play, because I've always heard just fantastic things about your tournaments, and this year was absolutely no exception. So again, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the work. Being a TO myself and an event organizer, I know how much work goes into all that. Thank you so very much. Funny thing about you forgetting the terrain. It's nice to know I'm not the only one that does stuff like that. And always when you're hours away from home, you're like, well, that's not going to work. So good job. But all around good job on that.
When we had almost pulled into the hotel parking lot, and we were like, we left that box of buildings.
Oh well, that's just how life goes. You know, that's fantastic. I'm sure NBA would let you borrow some buildings if you really wanted to. So again, I think I borrowed some. I borrowed a couple things from Brian from his booth to use in my core game. So again, us vendors don't mind putting our stuff out there to be borrowed and shown. It's okay. Fantastic. Well, as we're wrapping up, is there anything else you would say? So your next event is in May in Williamsburg, correct?
Yes. No, in Richmond. A little bit north of a little bit north of Richmond.
Okay.
So my next event is May 3rd at Richmond Open. Tickets just went on sale on Tabletop Events.
Okay.
I'll get the updated tournament pack will be coming out soon. I need to finish wrapping up Siege of Augusta before I could get that pack out, but that will be. But tickets did just go on sale. It'll be May 3rd. It's all the information's on Tabletop Events, but it's at Meadow Event Park. So
Okay.
in
Fantastic.
Richmond, Virginia.
You'll of course put that up on Facebook.
Yes.
And right, and then once you get it there, I'll grab it. I'll put it as a link in my shows going forward. We'll probably do an interview on that as you're coming in, because you'll have a whole another 6 months behind you. And then as
It
we
should
get
be
close
out by
in,
this weekend.
fantastic. And then I'll also get it up on Reddit and some of the discords that I'm on as well as we get closer to May. So that's fantastic. The next tournament in the region is going to be Warfare Atlanta, which is just about the cutoff for Army lists is the 25th. So if you still want to get that tournament itch in, John Ross, of course, is running what did I say? Warfare Atlanta? Yeah.
Warzone.
But Warzone, there we go. Warzone Atlanta. That's a full 1250 tournament on Saturday. I want to say Saturday and Sunday, and then a small tournament on Friday. And it's just a first class event. If you've not been, it's worth going. I'd encourage you to go, Kalissa, but I have a feeling when you're not doing bolt action, it seems like your life's already pretty full, kind of like the rest of us. So fantastic. All right. Well,
John
again,
keeps
thank you for your
encouraging
time.
us to go, and we keep trying to make it, but
Right.
trying to find it around work. We're trying. We try to go to as much as we can.
Yeah, he invited me to go as well, and I'm like, that's the same weekend as Jacksonville Skirmish, so Skirmish Con. So I'm going to be down at Skirmish Con doing that. So I think last year Skirmish Con was in March, and I had already kind of made the plans when they finally locked the date. And he moved his date. He was December last year, and he moved into February, I think, to try and get around some of the siege traffic. But that's how it goes. There's always something to do in the community. That's what's really cool. If you're watching, if you stayed with us, hope you have. I want to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Again, watch for Kalissa's tournaments, watch for John Ross's tournament, watch for tournaments in our area. I'll be running one in March, and they're an opportunity really, as much as to be competitive, is to meet new players. Like Kalissa said, people went to Siege of Augusta in Augusta, Georgia, and found players in their area. And I got to tell you, I ran into 2 or 3 people that live in Bluffton, South Carolina, which is about an hour from Savannah, that were like, wait, there are guys in Savannah that play bolt action and other historical games? And we're like, yes. So make those events as you can. Best way to support the channel is to buy some merch, or you can support us on Patreon. This is Thirsty Business. You can always buy us a cup of coffee on Patreon. That would be helpful. Like, subscribe, share, all the YouTube things. Leave comments in the section below. If you got questions, again, feel free to ask them or send an email. And with all that being said, this is Gator's Garage signing